Hello everybody, Barry Johns here. Welcome back to another edition of Studio Talk. Well, you know what? Your music really sucks. No matter what you do, your recordings are absolutely terrible. It's got to be that you've got bad converters and you need to upgrade those converters now. So what do you do? Well, let's get to it. Okay, so I get asked this question a lot, not only on my YouTube channel, but for several decades, I've been involved in some pretty popular recording forums out there, doing my best to help people out, as well as learn from others along the way. Somebody gets a creative idea, wants to try a different application or a different way of going about something. I'm more than happy to try someone else's idea. But this talk of conversion has been going on since the dawn of recording has started. And a lot of people are under the perception that if their recording sucks, in other words, the quality of the recording sucks, that it has to be that they need to upgrade their converters. There has to be some magic pill in going to that next level of conversion that's really going to make a huge difference. Let me get this one thing out of the way before some people get all bent out of shape, because they tend to do that within 30 seconds, go down and comment, and never even bother to watch the video to get context into what the discussion is about. And so if you're one of them, you probably should watch the videos and then comment, maybe not comment within 30 seconds of it being posted, which clearly tells me that you didn't watch the video. Just saying. But yes, is there a sonic improvement in getting better quality converters along the way? Is there improvement? And yes, absolutely there is. I mean, there's a reason that, I've owned a lot of high-end conversion for a very long time. Is it strictly just the conversion and the benefits if you get out of those more expensive interfaces? No, that's part of it for sure. But a lot of it has to do with drivers, quality, how well is it going to hold up? There's a lot of variables that come into play. Different types of I/O connectivity is super important. You've got MADI, Dante, you've got ADAT, of course. You have DB25 connectors on the back that really make it easy connecting to more of a different gear outside of your typical quarter-inch ballast and things like that, as well as SPDIF and AES. So there's a lot of things that really come into play of that, and it all boils down to the drivers of the company. They tend to focus a lot more attention on their drivers, making it have the lowest latency possible. So understand that if you're a firm believer in greater conversion, yes, I understand where you're coming from. But that said, the majority of people out there are not likely to go into that level of conversion. They're not. And so really the discussion is about if I'm using a $300, $400 interface, am I going to see significant audible differences in my end result? Not analyzing what you're listening to reference track, but your end result of your recordings by investing in better conversion. You will, but I would question whether it's as much as you probably think it will. Now here's what I'm going to tell you. I guarantee you, as in many people watching this video right now, can record a song on a $400 interface and have it sound fantastic, okay? Have it sound fantastic where nobody would know what level of interface that I'm using. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if your recordings are sounding bad, it has nothing really likely to do with your conversion at all. It has to do with your recording techniques, okay? Your ability to properly mix and edit your audio, okay? The right way to go about EQ, the right way to go about compression. Make sure when you're tracking your tracks that you're kind of have in mind what you're looking for. If you record every instrument full-bodied, like in other words, if you were playing that instrument in a room and you're trying to achieve that full-bodied instrument as if it's a solo instrument, let's take an acoustic guitar as an example. If you're going for that, that's likely to be problematic in your mix if it's just more of a pop song with a light acoustic guitar that really is kind of buried in the mix, right? That's where you really want more of the high end and really not any of the boominess or low end in it. And so if you can capture that with your miking techniques as best you can and the space that you're recording it in, then you're going to end up with a much more pleasing and workable result when you get into the mix and edit stage, okay? So really, I would encourage you to really fine tune your knowledge and your ability to properly record, properly EQ, properly compress, and then understanding where, when you're talking about EQ, where certain instruments where you want to focus on some frequencies but kind of get the others out of the way so they're not fighting each other, so you don't end up with a recording that's just a lot of low mids and muff, and I don't know what verbiage to use for it, but just woofy. I don't know. You probably know I hope you know what I'm talking about, because we've all been there at one stage or another. And so when you want to get that really polished sound, focus on all those other things before you focus on conversion. Does that mean you should never upgrade your converters? Absolutely not. That is not what I'm saying. At some point, as you really get these other aspects down and you really learn how to properly do this, you're going to see that your recording is going to take a whole new level. And then when you're at that stage, that's when you're definitely going to be able to benefit from upgrading your conversion. Okay, to what degree? That's a personal choice. It depends on whether this is stuff you're just producing for you at home or whether it's something going out to the masses. But there's tons of recordings that we still listen to today and are classic in the digital recording format, aka Digidesign 192s, that by all means your lower end, your budget conversion today, maybe not all the way to the low end, but your entry level conversion today is certainly on par with what the 192 was. But yet there's many components to a recording. It's not just a conversion. It doesn't hurt if you're going to track through a Neve API or SSL console. That doesn't do it damage anyway. But so anyway, think long and hard when you want to go out and shell out the next amount of money to upgrade your conversion before you're ready. Now, you could also be having some other problems. You could be saying, man, I'm always getting latency with my converter. I'm always getting these pops and these clicks, and all of a sudden, it'll just bog down and won't do what I need it to do. Well, there's some of the differences that really are unrelated to your conversion, but are probably related to probably most likely two things. One, it's going to be your computer. Is your computer optimized in the right way for recording audio? Not any computer off the shelf is going to be able to do it. If you're going to go into Walmart, as an example, and buy a $300 laptop, don't expect that to perform very well when it comes to digital audio workstations. It'll do perfectly fine surfing the internet, doing things like that, generalized office things like Microsoft Office. It'll do that perfectly fine. But when you get into what's needed for recording in a home studio, that computer's not going to suffice. And so that typically takes a larger investment, or what I recommend for most people is build your own. If you're on a Windows, just build your own. Now today, luckily, although they're not at the lower end price, but today, luckily, M1 MacBook Air I think it's M2 now, I guess, that can get you going very quickly. And you're not likely to run into many issues there if you're primarily audio, but you will if you may later on down the road, depending on how heavy your VI sessions are. So you really got to make sure it's a computer that your computer's not the problem, or your computer may be the problem and not your interface. The second part is how well are the drivers written by the manufacturer of that interface. That is one of the things that is super, super important, because their ability to properly write and code drivers to be able to take advantage of the fastest latency possible. And today, any interface coming out today is going to be the latest generation of USB-C likely, or it's going to be a Thunderbolt, okay? And so both of those are more than adequate for the home project studio, and so that won't be your bottleneck at the end of the day. But as long as you're going into an appropriate I/O on your computer. In other words, if you take the latest generation USB and you go in and plug it into a 2.0 or 1.0, well, you're not going to get the performance. You may physically be able to connect it, but you're back to that original specs, okay? And so ultimately, you really want to find a manufacturer that's known for drivers, which is why it's so important to do your homework when you buy your interface. And really the first thing I would always do is type in the name of the interface and say driver stability as an example. Then the name of the interface, latency as an example. Little things like that, and do your research and get into the forums and find out what people's experiences are, and that can tell you a lot. So more than likely, if you're having some technical issues, it's not likely your physical interface. It's more than likely your computer or the drivers at the manufacturer's going. That's not always the case, but more times than not, that is the case. That's why a company, as an example like RME, can actually write their drivers for their way more expensive interfaces. They don't really do entry-level interfaces, but RME, as an example, can write drivers that make it rock solid at a USB 2. All right, and so I happen to have a Fireface UFX Plus here by RME, and I run it via USB, not Thunderbolt, and I've never had an issue with it whatsoever. And that's mainly because I've maxed out my Thunderbolt ports on my computer, and the only thing I have left is USB-C, and I've never had a problem, so it's a non-issue for me. I think a lot of people get too wrapped up and too mind-boggled with that, and I think they're wasting their time for the most part. Not always, but for the most part. So again, if it's technical issues like pops and clicks and latency and things like that, that's unrelated most likely to it's unrelated to conversion completely. Okay, that's unrelated. And if you're having tons of issues in that area, and if you've upgraded your computer, but you're still having issues, then yes, it's time to upgrade to a better quality interface. This time, do your homework better. Okay, and then because you've learned a lesson, and that's a valuable lesson, and that's oftentimes how we learn. But ultimately, if it's the sound of your recordings, upgrading to better converters is not going to transform it the way you think it will. Yes, are you likely to get better mic preamps when you go up? Yes, these are the things that all add up. And maybe if those things are compelling enough, depending on what you're going to, that may be a reason. But solve your other problems first. If you're unable, and this is really the bottom line, if you're unable to get great sounding recordings out of a properly functioning, lower end of the tier, the $300-$400 range, if you're having trouble creating really great sounding music, it most likely has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with your interface. It's your skills, and that's what we all should be striving to improve. I continue to strive to improve, and I've been doing this, a long time. Look at this face. It's old as dirt, and I've been passionate about this, and that's one of the reasons I have this channel, so I can share all the mistakes I've made along the way, and because every mistake has turned into a lesson learned. You just don't want to repeat mistakes, okay? So if you like the things I talk about on this channel, do me a favor, hit that like, subscribe, notify, most importantly, subscribe. Help me grow the channel. Leave me some comments down below. Tell me what your thoughts are on this. One thing I always ask is just be respectful. If you're going to go in and just take a pot shot at somebody else or just take a pot shot at me without having some kind of intellectual discussion back and forth about it, that's just going to be nonsense, and we're not going to put up with that nonsense. But I'm okay being critiqued, but do it in a professional and adult way. Okay, that's all I'm saying, okay? We should be able to have civilized conversations without being bedroom warriors, kind of spouting off on the keyboard. Know what I'm saying? G-Money on the counter. We got no money. But until next time, I hope every one of you have a great day. Bye-bye. 1, 2, 3. Hey, do you ever wonder, well, you probably have never seen me actually do that because it always gets videoed out. Why do you think I count 1, 2, 3 and then do that? Why do you think I do that? Well, see, I record my audio in Nuendo. See it back over there, wherever, there it is, right there. See it over there? I record my audio in Nuendo and my video, at least in this particular angle, with a Sony a7 IV. I've also got an a7 III that I use too when I'm usually back kind of coming this way. But anyway, because I've got two separate files, I need those to line up so I don't look and sound like, an old Japanese movie about Godzilla. You know what I mean? Where I'm talking and my mouth is moving in a completely different direction. Yeah, I don't want that. That's not going to work out. So that little clap that you hear, I just line up the waveform coming out of the camera as well as the waveform in Nuendo, line those bad boys up, and it gets it close enough. Maybe not perfect, because I'd really need to use timecode to get that. And I haven't really invested in that yet, because so far, the redneck way of doing it's been kind of working for me. So there you go. There's a fun tip for you today that you cared absolutely nothing whatsoever about, but now you know.